Yes, I am an advocate for the action pattern. Use them pretty religiously for Laracasts. Just the simple things just stick around. Like, they win, just by default. People say depends because it makes us smarter. People did not like Laravel. They just did not.
Dude, Filament is really good.
I see the React version, and then I see the Vue version, and I just pick the damn Vue version every time. But I just feel like I'm being instructed that React has won the war, and we all just need to get on board.
What's up, everyone? It's Nunu here. If you enjoy the PHP content I produce, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Only 50% of the viewers actually are subscribers of my channel, and I'm trying to reach 20k subscribers by the end of July. Thank you so much, and enjoy the video. Okay, I think I'm ready on my side. How about you?
Yep. All things just sending this right now. Let's do it.
Let's do it, yep.
Do you actually have questions, or are we just going to wing it?
I do have questions. Yeah, I've digged in your past, dude. Like the very first screenshot of Laracasts and everything.
Oh, no. It's so bad.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. All right, dude, I'm going to go live in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. And oh boy, today I'm here with the mighty Jeffrey Way, the person who have taught me PHP in Laravel. Isn't this crazy, Chad? Super happy to have, the voice, the face behind Laracasts. Jeffrey Way, thank you so much for coming today, dude. Thank you. How you doing?
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I don't know if you noticed, but recently on Twitter, this wave about the action pattern. I don't know if you remember, but in Laravel Podcasts, Season 3, you, Taylor, and Matt Stauffer were mentioning all the time this pattern called the self-handle command bus.
Self-handling commands, yeah.
Exactly. And that's exactly the action pattern 2025. It's literally a class that encapsulates state and behavior, and it can be reused either on the web, on the console, on the jobs. You can basically reuse all over the place. But, I want to know your opinion about the action pattern. Is it something that you personally like? It's something that you see yourself using, for example, on the Laracasts code base?
Okay, a bunch of things to say here. So first up, yes, I am an advocate for the action pattern.
Let's go.
But here's the interesting thing. Before actions, like you said, we kind of called them self-handling commands. I guess it was an implementation of the command pattern. Although I don't, this is where it's like people who really research design pattern books may know more. I think the idea behind the command pattern was more that the command class is like the ticket, the instruction. It's not necessarily the handler. So like if you were to, let me think of an example. Like if you were taking somebody's order, at a restaurant, the command would be the ticket where they write your order, but it's not the thing that makes your hamburger, right? It's just the. So I think that's what the command pattern actually is, and in that case, actions aren't command. I don't know, but that's where self-handling commands come in. It's like it's the command and the handler all in one. And
dude, I still remember exactly what you said. You said something like this: if there is only one handler for one command, why would there be two different classes? Let's just put them together, like literally, Yes. And
because you never know. Like this was the motivation behind command bus. It's like, all right, you have this thing that needs to happen, so we're going to represent that as a command. And the command is just like a plain old PHP class that has the instruction. It can list details about what the thing is, what the handler is, what the action, whatever, however you want to format it. But you could have any number of handlers registered to respond to that, and then you could have a command bus that accepts the command and then dispatches the command to the handlers. And then if you need to, you could decorate that command so that you could have this decorator wraps the command, and you can do all of this amazing stuff if you apply this pattern. And I drank the Kool-Aid. And then what happens, though, and this may get people mad because I know people love this pattern, but just for me, at my skill level and my level of complexity for what I build, it was just horrible in practice. I really hated it. So that was one of my first introductions to something where it's like, on paper, this sounds really good. The idea that you have this open flexibility, you can wrap things up, you can swap things out on the fly. You can swap out the handler on the fly and you don't have to change any of the, like all of this sounds really good. And yet in practice, wasn't good. And and that's one of the things, by the way, I've learned from Taylor, at least how I've learned from him. Like, he takes how it feels to use, and he puts that at the top level, and everything else comes below that. And that was such a learning opportunity for me to understand that, I don't know, that matters more than every book you will ever read. Every justification for why something is good takes a back seat to whether or not it feels good to interact with in real life. Self-handling commands. Before that, when I worked at Envato, they used a version of this, and they called them use cases.
Really?
We call them use cases. Same thing, though. You have a class that has a name that corresponds to what the thing does. They would have a method. We called it handle. Handle method. Wait, hold on. Does Laravel use handle? They used execute. There it is. They used a method. It doesn't matter what the method name is, of course, but they used a method called execute. Execute would defer to protected methods on their Ruby class. And it's the same thing. It's an action class. It's a self-handling command. It's funny to see some of these things sort of get rebranded over the years, but it's kind of the same thing. It just kind of it falls out of vogue, and then like a new generation sort of discovers it and rebrands it and makes it a little better. But yeah, that's like the long version of saying I'm a big fan of actions. I use them. Actually, at this point, I want to talk about this too, but I use them pretty religiously for Laracasts. So what's interesting for anyone who's experimenting with it is deciding whether or not to use them for every single thing that your code base does, or to use them when it's a little bit more complex. So, like,
what do you do personally? Do you use them for everything, or
kind of now? And this is another interesting thing about a really long running code base is like you can almost slice up the code base and see where you were at different points in your career. And sometimes when you adopt a new, and you'll know this too, of course, when you adopt some new system, it's like you're not necessarily going to go and update everything. Sometimes that's a little dangerous, right? It's like, okay, would it be appropriate to spend 2 weeks updating all of this stuff? Or it works, it's good as is. If we need to tweak it, we'll deal with it then and we'll migrate it over. But it's fine, better to leave it alone. And so, yeah, I have a lot of things in the Laracast code base where it's like, okay, this doesn't use that approach, but if I ever rewrite it, it will use actions. But yeah, I've been trying to figure out, and I'd be curious about your thoughts on this. For cloud, like, do you adopt a system where every single thing you can do in cloud is represented as an action, even if it's just a one-liner update method on an eloquent model or whatever? Or do you reserve actions for things that you know might be used elsewhere? I'm kind of leaning more towards the idea of, like, even if it's one line of code, you wrap it in the action class. And I think maybe that's a good way to go, if only, again, for the fact that you open up this directory and you just instantly see everything your code base does. And that's such a beautiful thing, because we've all experienced code bases where it's like, all right, I need to change X, and I have no clue whatsoever where to go to make that update. You know, you start in the routes file, and then you just kind of dig in, like, okay, this calls this. Okay. And then 10 minutes later, you find the file that needs to be updated. I love with actions, if I need to update something related to, like, posts, the obligatory posts example, then I know I'm going to look for something related to posts within the action folder. Yeah. And that's really nice. But I'm curious how you're handling this with cloud.
Yeah,
and your
great question. Great question. So there is multiple reasons why I always use actions on Laravel Cloud, no matter how big the actual logic. Yeah, but there is a couple of reasons. Like, one of the biggest is consistency, because again, we are expanding the team, and the last thing I want is a new team member coming and questioning themselves, okay, should I use an action or not? Should I, I want them to be like perfect, crystal clear how they exactly develop a feature on Laravel Cloud. And for example, if they see how databases got implemented and they see that we used literally actions for every single thing we can do with the database, they just think to them, okay, now I'm implementing caches, and I'm going to also do actions for every single cache usage. You know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons, consistency. Also, a very important reason why we are using actions, it's because we are very likely to have an API in the future. So I want to be able to literally share common behavior between the web layer, the regular web layer, and my API. So with the API, we'll be able to create a database, and through the regular web layer, you do that too. So basically, they both share the same action, and the same form request too. Also, one of the biggest reasons why do I love this pattern too is that in Laravel Cloud, we actually have a bunch of chained actions. So for example, you go to Laravel Cloud, you click on create application, and something that happens when you create an application is that you get as well a default environment, and you get as well a default stack, for example. So all of those three are literally three different actions where the parent one is called create application, calls the create environment, the create environment calls, you know what I mean? So they all chain.
So now, actions accept other actions
on the constructor.
And then that's the best part of it, right?
Yeah.
Actions deferring to other actions, and you can just stack them as much as you want to.
Yeah, so there is that, but the best part of this is something I really like, which is ensuring database consistency, which is I always wrap the handle of my action within a DB transaction. And what this allows me to do is that if I'm going to chain actions, if the very last one, for example, fails, this will bubble up until the parent one in the transaction will never be committed. And I just love this. And the database will always be consistent over time. So this is like just three random reasons why I just love actions and why we are so heavy into them on Laravel Cloud. And now Forge is also like migrating to actions too. And, you know, I'm a big advocate of this. Like, honestly, I'm so into this pattern, man.
Me too. So here's what I like about actions. They are wildly simple. And over the years, I've learned just the simple things just stick around. Like they win, just by default sometimes. The simple things stick around. And I love with action classes, it's literally like, don't call it an action class if you want. Just call it a class, right? It doesn't matter. It's a class with a common method that you call from your controllers. And yeah, you have all the other stuff, like you said, like if you build an API, you can just call that action from your CLI or from your API. It doesn't matter. So that's cool too. But again, the implementation is literally, it's just a class and nothing more, which I really like. I was talking to somebody about this, like, again, going back to the command bus idea. The command bus was just so much more complex in its implementation. Yeah. And it disguised things. So you would send this command out into the ether, and then something would pick it up. And you had to understand what the logic was for determining what the appropriate handler was for your command. And it's like it just disguised everything, and it made your code less easy to reason about, in my opinion. Actions is like, it could not be simpler. Type an action in your controller, and then you call the action. It's instantly clear. I think it's a beautifully simple approach.
Dude, you mentioned something very cool as well, which is it's instantly clear. Like something, I don't know if you know, but I've developed this social media called pinkwitty.com. And I run the mistake of actually, instead of using actions, using regular events, you know? And something I was doing all the time is that I was just broadcasting events and then hearing those events elsewhere. And those elsewheres was like doing something like sending an email or if something was dirty, it was like doing extra logic. And over time, it just became a total nightmare to understand what the heck was even happening, you know?
Totally.
Because I was just firing events and I had no idea what those events were being listening to. And it was so confusing. Like that's also the reason why I love so much the action pattern is that I can just click on create application and I can see exactly what this is doing and what it's calling. You know, it's just so clear.
I love it. Yeah, so I'm kind of at I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm kind of at the point now, I almost sort of think of server-side events and listeners almost a little bit like an anti-pattern, at least for my own code base. I think it's really useful for like you've made a package and you're going to fire this event so that anyone who uses your package can hook into things that you do. That's really helpful. But like for your own application code, I just, in almost every single situation where I have dispatched an event, and then registered a listener class the way we learned how, I just migrated away from it. I think in every single occurrence, I would love to look, but I don't think I have any listener classes anymore. It's almost all exclusively like actions or maybe jobs. But yeah, you're right. It's like you fire off an event, and it's like the hard part with all of this is when you implement the code, it all makes sense, of course. So it's like, yes, you fire the event, and this class picks it up. And I know that because I literally just wrote it, right? But then you come back a year later, and you forgot you wrote that, and you just don't know where that thing lives. Yeah. And maybe you have a convention where you like search the code base for handle event name, you know, to find something that responds to it, or maybe you manually register it. But either way, it disguises the code in a way that almost always backfires, in my opinion. So I don't know. I just personally, I think they might be an anti-pattern. But I don't know. Is that too far? What do you think?
No, I think, I think like every opinion which is based on real world examples and real world projects, in your case, Laracasts, in my case, something like Binkery now, in Laravel Cloud 2, they are perfectly valid opinions. And those are opinions that I want to hear. That's why I stopped to just, I don't want to call some of the books a scam because they are not a scam, but some of those books which I have learned the theory from, they contain the theory without actual reality, without the bread and butter of the real world programming. And so this is the kind of discussions that I love to have because they have actually real world examples that we face on every single day, and I love that. And you mentioned that Laracast code base is now implementing the action pattern. So I assume this is the place you are typically storing all of the business logic. How about the front end though? What are you using recently these days for Laracasts?
So we use Vue.js and Inertia. I'll say I have felt I would love to hear your opinion on this. I have felt overwhelming amounts of pressure to switch to React, and maybe that pressure is in my head. But I feel like that community is so aggressive about evangelizing React. And maybe rightly so, by the way. I originally learned React before Vue, and I liked it. But I liked Vue more. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just that community is so aggressive in a good way. Like, I'm not saying in a mean-spirited way, but I just feel like I'm being instructed that React has won the war and we all just need to get on board. And I feel like I'm over here like, I don't know. I look at the React code and then the Inertia version, and I pick the I'm sorry, I keep saying Inertia. I mean Vue. I love Inertia too, but I mean Vue. I see the React version, and then I see the Vue version, and I just pick the damn Vue version every time. And I'm trying to like stay true to that feeling of like, look, if one day I prefer the React version, I'm gonna take the time and we're gonna move over. Or if Vue folds and Evan moves on to other stuff, which who knows if that might happen, maybe then. But like until that point, I'm happy with Vue. We use Inertia, we use Tailwind CSS, almost no Blade at all. I use Blade when we generate like thumbnails. So for example, if we publish a video, I have this job that will automatically take a screenshot of a web page, basically.
Oh wow, that's useful.
It's very helpful. That's Blade. But other than that, I don't think there's any Blade in the site. It's all just Vue pages. Yeah, it's cool. I'm happy with it.
By the way, everyone at home, let me know in the chat right now which framework do you use. Do you use Vue.js, do you use React, or do you just go for Livewire? Write in the comments because me and Jeffrey, we want to see that. Dude, I want to ask you, what did you feel about Inertia V2?
So good. So good.
So good, right? Oh my God.
Okay, so here's the thing. I thought Inertia 1 was so good too. And I think Jonathan was so busy with Tailwind that part of me was like, John, and I even said this to him when I went to the Tailwind Miami meetup. I was like, I don't know if you realize how popular Inertia is. It is so incredibly good for people who build those kinds of applications or code bases. And I think maybe he just didn't have time to work on it as much. I'm not sure. But either way, I guess Laravel worked out an agreement with him, and it's so much better for it. So many of the bottlenecks, so many of just the little annoyances have been solved. So I was on board in the first week or so. It's so good.
I'm going to tell the story behind Inertia too. Before we jump into that, dude, it's kind of funny because every now and then I ask on my live stream what people are using these days. I see a lot of Livewire, I see a lot of React, a lot of Vue, but it's typically 30, 30, 30. Everyone... I have always mixed responses. For some reason today there is a lot of Vue on the chat, so I assume a lot of people that follow Laracasts and enjoy some of the Vue content you produce over there too. So the story about Inertia 2, that's funny because I'm gonna be honest, man. I was a Livewire person. I just use Livewire all the time, and I remember that we started Laravel Cloud with Inertia and React, and I was using Inertia 1 on these very early days of cloud. And from someone coming from Livewire, I thought, Jesus Christ, this is broken. Like there is literally nothing. Like because on Livewire you get so many little things. Like you over the mouse, the request gets triggered automatically. There is so many little things on Livewire that you just get and you take it as granted, and you only noticed when you switch for something like Inertia. And I know I literally said like to the team, Inertia V1 is missing so many little things. And at that exact moment, Joe Tannenbaum was already working on Inertia V2, and he already have developed some of the features we have on Livewire. And I was just basically, telling Joe, dude, it would be really cool if we could have this that we already have on Livewire, but you could bring that to Inertia. So just to say that for me, Inertia V1 was very far away from feature complete. I feel like Inertia V2 is now in the very good spot versus, compared with something like Livewire, for example. I think like both, they're actually, great options, and they both have kind of feature parity almost at this point.
Vue and React or Vue and
no, Inertia. Inertia and Livewire, yeah. They are feature parity at this point.
Yeah, Livewire is great. I mean, at Laracasts, it's probably the number one question we get, and I bet you get this too, where it's like, which one should I use? And that is something I worry about a little bit, that newcomers are like not sure what they're supposed to do. Because if you remember at that phase, a lot of it is just wanting to know, like, okay, tell me, what is the next step? Just tell me what to learn, and I will learn the thing. But they come to this fork in the road, and it's like, okay, do I learn the Livewire thing or do I go down the JavaScript path? And everyone gives the same answer, which is like, well, just sort of depends on what you want to do. Experiment. Like nobody really wants to give a strong opinion on it because there really isn't.
And it's so annoying because it depends. Depends on what, dude? Like literally,
I like people say depends because it makes us smarter. Like, well, of course you have to consider context. It depends, but that is so not helpful. Again, for newcomers, because that's not useful. They don't know what it depends on. They want to know, just tell me, again, I see this over and over. They say, tell me the thing to do next so I can move on to the next step in my learning, And maybe that just comes from school, where it's like you go to the next grade, and here's your book for this grade, and work through this. And then you go to and it's hard to get to the point where it's like, well, you just experiment and pick what you think works well. I think people have trouble hearing that, even though it's the answer. I think my advice would be, if you know nothing about JavaScript, Livewire is kind of a beautiful thing. You're able to build these interactive websites knowing very little JavaScript. If you're incredibly comfortable with JavaScript, I would probably reach for Vue or React or anything else. Because if you're already fluent there, then leverage that fluency, But I don't know. I like both. I genuinely like both. I've done Livewire on some side projects, and it's just... Livewire is just, that's the best way I can explain it. When you do something in PHP and it just works, and you're like, wow. It blows my mind sometimes that it works.
I call it ridiculous. Because sometimes you just add a trait and you have pagination, bam, just like that. And I'm like, holy shit, it's just insane. And even file uploads on Livewire are just crazy. If you have to develop a file upload from scratch, it's just so much work. And with Livewire, it's just so easy.
I agree.
But one of the things I like to say when picking something like Livewire Inertia is that, okay, if you are getting started, if you just have learned Laravel and you still have to learn the ropes on MySQL, probably just go with Livewires, because the learning curve to the JavaScript ecosystem is just in another level, in my opinion. Probably will overwhelm you. But if you know Vue already, probably you can pick Inertia with React, because Vue and React for me are literally the same thing. I feel like, as you said, man, they are so similar at this point, man. Even the results they produce on the browser, they are so similar too.
Yeah.
Undeniably, learning React though brings you this skill, which is you might want to develop native applications with React Native. That's a skill you probably want to have in your belt.
Yeah. I think I would agree. Yeah, it's a tough thing. It's hard to tell people, like, just play around. And I don't know why that's hard for newcomers to hear. Maybe they just think, like, I don't have time to play around. Like, I gotta get going. I need to get a job. I don't have time. But that is the answer. It's just toy around, try some things out, whatever kind of whichever one resonates with you, just go down that path, and you can always go back and try something else. That's what we all do. Just how it goes.
How about tooling, dude? Are you a fan of like local PHP tooling, things like PHP Stand, React, or Pint? Do you use them a lot, or?
Sure, of course. I use Pint. I use, I'm actually probably like a lot of people, it's like I have so many damn configuration files. And it's hard to know sometimes, like, am I still using that tool? I can't remember. Like, am I using PHP CS Fixer, or is such and such tool taken over? And I don't know if I should delete that. Either way, I have like dozens of configuration files. But I use, of course, I use Pint. I use Rector. I use, I use PHP Stan and Larastan. Although I would love to pick your brain on this because I have the levels set very high. I think high is the one where it's not as aggressive, right? It's a little more.
Is
low?
the other so low? It's like less strict. High is super strict.
So I have it at a very low setting because I find sometimes if you're not careful, it's like you're going to spend your whole day fixing PHP errors. And
which level are you talking about? It's like level 4, 5.
I don't know. I'd have to check. It's the one they recommend. It might be 4. I'll double check. I can look in a minute. But either way, like I find when you go much higher, especially for an existing code base, it can be a little overwhelming, especially for some of the Laravel stuff where it'll report things where it's like, it's fine. It works okay, but maybe because this doesn't have some type or you're using a collection in a certain way and you're interacting with it in a certain. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to spend half of my day trying to solve this PHP Stan error that I know is not actually an issue, but I want to deal with it. And so then you have to decide, like, do I do that thing where I just ignore some regular expression that points to that, what I'm talking about. But yeah, I would like to increase that level. And I was thinking maybe AI could kind of do that for me automatically now. That's the kind of thing where AI can be very cool, I think. It's just doing all the stuff you don't want to do, all the stuff you don't have time to do. If I could just ask it to like figure out why this warning is showing up for me and solve it. And especially like a year from now when it's probably going to be 95% consistent, I think that's cool. So
here's the fun story. I actually think you said you are using level 4. I actually think for web applications, people should be using level 4, 5, or 6. I don't think they should go higher than that because, as you said, man, like I think like if you go to level max, at that point, just don't use PHP anymore because you are not embracing the dynamic nature or the easiness that PHP and Ruby and Python brings to you. You know what I mean? So in my opinion, level 4, 5, 6 is just perfect for web applications. It's that level which is not annoying, but just brings to your attention some potential things which might actually be bugs. And I love those 4 levels, 4, 5, and 6 for web apps. Although for library development, things like, the OpenAI PHP client or Past PHP or even Pint, I go for level max because the code is so small where it will be used by so many people where I can actually afford spending the time to be at level max. And regarding...
Go ahead. No, you go. I want to hear you.
Okay, it's in regarding AI. I mean, the thing you said, I love the just being able to do 2 things at the same time. Like literally, ask AI, can you just fix my test suite while I'm gonna work on my own things? I love to do that. By the way, I do that stuff all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes me feel better that you're recommending level 4. But you know what I think is interesting is I think developers have this quirk where it's like if you're not doing the max, you're phoning it in. And I feel like developers, we just have this like, no, I have to do the max. I have to do everything the way it is most optimally intended. So it almost feels like you're cheating if you turn the level down. I don't know, maybe that's a personality thing with me, but I when I turned it to level 4 or whatever I have it set at, it was like shame. It's like, okay, I'm gonna turn it down and I'm gonna give up for the day. But that's interesting. And then other than PHP Stan, I think the unsung hero of the PHP world is Rector. Rector is so good and reliable and consistent, and it never fails me. Like it always is just perfect. So that is one of my core tools. Let me, you know what I'll do right now is I'll just pull up my composer.json and see some of the scripts that I run.
Meanwhile, Chat, just write on the chat which level of PHP Stan do you use, Chat. Do you use level 4, 5, 6, or level max? Let me know in the chat. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, so I've just opened up the Laracasts codebase, composer.json. I'm looking at my script section. I have a script for Rector, and that just runs Rector process. I have one for Pint. I have one that runs my pest tests. It runs it in parallel. with 10 processes. I have, that's kind of it really. And then I have a couple scripts that do a couple, like I have a script, this is kind of cool. So I can run composer run format, and then that will do rector for me, and then it'll run pint. So I would do that manually right before I commit some kind of feature. But those are kind of my core tools. And then anything else I use, I don't know, just sort of happens automatically in the editor, and I've forgotten what it's called.
I want to see mine real quick.
Yeah, I want to see what you're using.
Nuno Maduro Vest Kits.
Are you doing the same thing where you just have a script in your composer file?
Yeah. So actually, no. I think I know without watching. So basically, I have my composer lint, which calls pint and rector. I have composer. Okay. Test types, which runs PHP stan. I have composer test unit, which runs past, and I have composer test browser, which runs browser testing.
Okay, so is test doing the thing where it analyzes it, but it doesn't actually perform the updates?
Exactly. So every time I prefix something with test, means that I need to run that script on my CI.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because you can have composer test, double columns, unit, double columns, architectural, for example, because I use architectural testing from Past2. So I use a bunch of that composer scripts, dude. It's just so cool.
So cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, so not that dissimilar from what I'm doing. That's great.
Yeah. You pretty much use the same tools I use. PHP stan, Pint. Do you use Pint just regular Pint, or use Pint with some configuration on top of it?
I think I have a Pint config file, don't I? Pint, what is it called? Pint?
Pint.json.
Pint.json. Yeah, but it's very simple. So I'm using the Laravel preset, and I only have like 2 rules. And I don't even know if this is a problem I run into. It's like, is this configuration file still relevant? Because it's possible, not in the case of Pint, but with other tools where it's like, maybe I created this in 2015, and I don't know if this is relevant. That's something you got to be careful of. Anyways, I have 2 rules, just one about trailing commas and multi-line. I'm not a fan of that. I know everyone else loves it. I don't like that. That's where, like, if you have an array, should you prefix the last item in the array with a comma? I always do it. I know everyone does it except me. It irks me. It's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, no, there's nothing after it. That's the end. I get the argument. Like, the argument is like, if you add a new item, for version control, it looks a little cleaner. Who cares? It irks me to see it, so I turn that off. And then I have something related to concat space. I can't even remember what that is. Do you know what that is? Concat _ space.
I think it's when you are, when you have multiple strings and you want to combine together, there is always a leading space in the middle, the dot. Right. I think it just removes that space. I think.
Oh, yes. I have it set to 1. I don't know. And that's it. So I'm pretty much using default Pint, which I love, by the way.
Dude, by the way, people from the chat are using level 4, 5, level 6, level 9. A bunch of people are using level max 2. On regards to PHP stan, and rector, as you said, dude, it's just so good, man. It's honestly, I use rector all the time, especially when migrating to new PHP versions, because I just get all that refactored to the latest version of PHP automatically. Dude, I want to ask you something for so long already, which is, do you use, and I want to ask Jeffrey, but also the chat at the same time, do you use PHP annotations, like literally? Just, the kind of PHP annotations I'm talking about is that, for example, you have a public function index.
Okay.
Do you have list all of the series or list all of the, articles? Do you have like that small comment on top of every single PHP method or not?
Like the doc blocks?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, both. It's a long-running code base. I've had lots of opinions over the years. There's some, like, I've gone through phases where it's like, no doc blocks whatsoever. It's clear enough. If it wasn't clear, you didn't need the doc block. And then I've kind of migrated back, kind of for a weird reason. So I will have a doc block with the intention of what the thing does. And I get it. Sometimes the description is just kind of repeating what the method does. I get it.
Yeah.
It's dumb. It adds space and it adds room to breathe in between my methods. And I know that's dumb, but it helps me when I feel like each method kind of has its own, I don't know, as I'm speaking this, it sounds really dumb. But
Yeah.
the doc blocks separate the methods, and it just feels better to me. I'm not adding the params in the doc blocks. I will just use the types there as part of the parameters. So I don't do that anymore. Like I don't want to. So that's one thing I do consider a smell is if you're typing a parameter, but then you also reference the type within the doc
Absolutely.
block.
If it's the same type, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that all goes at this point, but I will keep the doc block. I don't know. What do you recommend? What should I do, Nuno?
So I'm going to tell you what I still do until this day, which is I always write a small line about what the method is doing. Sometimes, as you said, the line will exactly just be, so obvious to what the method is actually doing. But for me, it's about like visually consistency, For example, I do not bear watching two methods in one have a comment, in the other doesn't have a comment.
Yes.
I cannot read it that. It just triggers my, it just doesn't work for me. And I just have to have a comment just to be similar. So they look very similar, basically. Yeah, so I do use docs all the time.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Yeah, I've even gone through phases where it's like, I hate the idea that you have to add public before a public method because, of course, if you don't add the visibility, it defaults to public, as you know.
Yeah.
And so I've gone through phases where it's like, no, I'm not adding that because it's just extra... It's just more crap I have to look at when I'm not doing anything unique. But the problem is, like, okay, fine. For some of your methods, you just have function, blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as you have like a private method, it looks bad, right? Like it is clear. And I don't know, maybe some people would say it actually looks better. Either way, I don't do it anymore. But I love, either way, like the people who omit public from their class methods, from their public class method, like I like those people. Because I like people that are just kind of challenging whatever the common convention is. Even if it's not something I would do, I just like that spirit. That's why I like Livewire, by the way. I don't use it in my main code base because Laracast was written long before Livewire, but I love the spirit of what Caleb has done. He just challenged the norm completely, and I have no doubt that people were probably making fun of the tool and mocking it on Reddit, and he just stuck with it, and he won. I think that is so cool, and I love people that are constantly challenging what is the accepted norm. That's why I like Laravel. Taylor completely challenged what was expected at that time. Trust me, I was around like at the beginning. People did not like Laravel. They just did not. Like there was such a vocal community that was anti every single thing that framework represented. And so again, from that perspective, it's fun to see that like Laravel has kind of won that war. Symfony is great. I use so many of the tools from it and the packages. But again, I think it would be fair to say Laravel kind of won that battle. And I appreciate that so much because I saw it at the beginning and how ridiculed Taylor was, that it's fun to see the other side of that. Yeah.
So two things. Taylor actually told me that he misses a little bit those times.
Oh, yeah?
Because he told me, like, the drama, sometimes he wanted to prove people wrong, basically, People would just jump on him and be mean at him, and he wanted to actually prove people wrong, and that actually motivated him a bunch to actually make Laravel so successful. And, you mentioned, like, Livewire. It's kind of funny. You should take a look at the internals of Livewire, because Caleb doesn't use public visibility at all, so it just have function. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if the function below is private or not. It just have function still.
Does he do any convention, like the old school, like if you underscore this method, then
that would be
is
interesting,
the cue that it's a private. Does he do anything like that?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But he uses like things like static all over the place. I love it, And you just mentioned the old convention, dude. I was doing a live stream a couple of weeks ago. I learned literally Go. And Go has this convention, which is very interesting, which is uppercase methods that start with an uppercase, they are public. Mm-hmm. Methods that start with lowercase, they are private. Isn't this like magic?
Oh, that's interesting. So is that convention-based? Is there anything enforcing that in Go? Like if you make it... Go ahead.
It's enforced, yeah. So the Go compiler will not actually allow you to call a lowercase method outside of the class if it's lowercase.
Oh, that's cool. See, I like that. I like things anything that just kind of, I don't know, it does that simplify. So this is an interesting conversation of like, okay, is that better than being very specific about your visibility before it? Because I could imagine people saying like, well, now people have to understand that there's a rule about uppercase versus lowercase, and they would use that as the argument for why it's bad. But then like anything else, it's like, yeah, you learn Go. It has its own set of conventions. One of the first things you figure out is that if it's an underscore, it's going to be labeled private. If it's lowercase, it's private. And then you just learn it, This is the same thing with some of the arguments against certain pieces of magic in Laravel. And it's like the idea that people won't know. And it's like, okay, yeah, and then they'll know. And that's just how it goes. Like, there is a small cost to have this affordance, whether it's like, being able to call, I can't remember what it's called. What's the thing with Laravel collections where you can interact with it as if it's a property, but you're actually
it's called higher order proxying.
Higher order proxies. That's the same thing. Like, I can totally get the argument of like, but now people have to know that that's a thing. They're going to try to call a property on the collection, and then it doesn't and it's like, yeah. And that's one of the things you got to learn is that this is a thing you can do with collections, and it's really cool. So that's an interesting argument that I've seen repeated over and over again over the years.
Yeah, I feel like people just learn it eventually, I just said, like, if you ask any Go developer these days, what is uppercase, what is lowercase methods, they know exactly what it is. And I feel like even PHP back in the days, they have this PHP, I think still Python as, which is a double underscore is private, one underscore is protected, no underscore is public, which I think it's so interesting and so much more, so much more characters than just writing the public thing entirely. Just switching a little bit topics here because I want to be careful about your time. I want to ask you a little bit about what are you using for the backend of Laracasts right now? For example, if you have a video that you need to publish, or if you have a moderation to do you have any sort of admin panel behind the scenes these days, or not really?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So we have a couple things. I use Nova, Laravel Nova, which is great. I'm a big fan of just using your database GUI. I think the database GUI, like Table Plus, that is just the hero of CMSs. Especially anyone watching this, if you're like building your own SaaS or whatever, Table Plus is your best friend, and that's okay. Don't feel bad about using Table Plus as your CMS. We all have done it at different points, and that's great. Other than that, I use Laravel Nova, and then we have just an endless number of CLI scripts and artisan commands that we run. So this is kind of a cool thing. Running the business, but also writing all of the code, I'm able to find like the things you do over and over for customer support requests, and all of those get turned into artisan commands. Because even if we were to implement that as part of like a dashboard GUI, it's like it's not as fast as just quickly running an artisan command. So I will just find things like, oh, this person wants me to refund their most recent subscription charge and then cancel their account, and then we should send a goodbye, all of that stuff. It's like when you first launch a site, it's like you are manually maybe even going to Stripe and you're canceling the subscription and then you're updating the database, or you can just run an artisan command that does everything for you. And it systematizes it. So if there's specific situations where a refund should not be granted, again, you can work this into your dashboard, but it's also cool just to have it as a CLI script that defers to some logic, and that's great. And then that script is responsible for whether or not a refund is allowed. And you have no situation where somebody is having to decide, like, is it okay if I do a refund in this? No, it's written in the command. If you are requesting it after such and such time, it checks. Like something that jerks do is they will sign up and then they'll download a bunch of videos and then they cancel their account right away and then they request a refund, and that gets me mad. Nuno. So we have situations where it's like, all right, if you've done that, that's not cool, and we're going to deny the refund. Either way, the point is we have all of these artisan commands that will expedite every possible thing that you need to do, usually in response to a customer support request. Even things like if we agree to give somebody like a free account, like a sponsorship or something, there's a command for that. There's a command to do random stuff like updating records in the database. Sometimes I will create temporary commands if we add a new feature. And, sometimes like when you add a new feature, it's like, yeah, we have to migrate all of the records from this old table. They need to move over to the new system. And you have to figure out like, okay, when we push to production, we then need all of this stuff to run that runs the migration to update all of the data, basically. And I love creating just even temporary artisan commands for that. You run it once, and then you delete the file when you're done. I love Artisan is one of my favorite things about Laravel. And then other than that, in terms of like the upload pipeline for Laracasts, I think I call it pipeline. It's literally upload pipeline. And as you can imagine, like there's all of these things we have to do when we publish a new course. We have to... so this is interesting. So when an instructor creates a new course, I don't have them go into like a GUI and manually... Episode 1, they create it and they see like a WordPress form and they fill it out. It's just, I can't handle it. So what they do is they submit a YAML file that just has the episode list. And that is almost like the source of truth at the beginning for everything. And we can make changes. And then I run a script that basically reads that YAML file and uploads it. And as part of that, it's like it finds the thumbnail and it uploads the thumbnail to S3. It sends all of their videos to this service called Dolby.io, and that optimizes the audio. And then it goes to Vimeo, and then Vimeo processes it. And then we create the transcripts, and then we convert the transcripts. There's all of these things that have to be done. And I've kind of tweaked it over the years. It's kind of interesting. I now have these... in the last year or two, I just create scheduled commands that run once a day or so that just figure out what needs to be done. And it just takes care of it. So like there's so many things now, like generating, like I said, the open graph cards for Twitter when we post it, creating transcripts, converting the transcripts to Markdown, creating summary. There's just all of this junk that has to be done. And I just do that through scheduled commands. And that literally just reads the videos table to figure out like, all right, do we have anything that needs to be done? Anything? Oh, this one doesn't have a summary. And a summary is like the article version of a transcript. And it'll find it like, oh, we got to do this one. So dispatches a job, creates it, and it's done. And then tomorrow or whatever, it'll do it again. And it just takes care of everything for me. The alternative to that is you have to like we were talking about, maybe like run a event that says series published, and then you register a listener that says generate summary listener. And then if you have anything where it's like that listener needs to be run again, you don't know what to do. It's like, okay, do I just manually boot up PHP Artisan Tinker and try to run that? Like, it's just annoying. So I like the idea of having a scheduled command that's just constantly looking for stuff that it needs to do.
I love it. I love it, man. Honestly, I love it. I think, like, as you said, man, commands are super powerful. You can literally just go to the editor and write the PHP Artisan command that does exactly what you want. And especially for when the team is actually developers too, gets even easier, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Because you can easily customize. I just want to add that, I have tried Filament recently, and dude, Filament is really good. Like, honestly, I was like, okay, another admin panel and everything. But I tried that thing here on stream, and it's just mind-blowing. You know that feeling when you first try Livewire? Just imagine that for admin panels. It's kind of the same thing.
So this is interesting. So we have a couple courses about Filament on Laracasts that I didn't do. So I'm going to tell you the truth, though, and I bet I represent many people. And maybe this is a marketing issue with the Filament team. I'm going to be honest with you, Nuno. I don't know what Filament is. Like, I don't know. I've never tried it. I hear admin panel, like, is it one of those, is it like an alternative to Nova? I genuinely don't know what it is. And so maybe, I wonder if that's a marketing thing with them, because I am very into this community, and it's just, I don't know. And I think it's just an issue of, like, there's just so much stuff all the time being thrown at you across the board, and you can't learn everything. And so you have people where it's like, okay, there's this Livewire thing, and then there's Inertia 2, and then there's this, and then there's all this tooling. And everyone feels so overwhelmed by how much you're expected to know at this point. I don't know what Filament is.
So I think you should do something. I think you should literally find some time and just stream with Filament people instructing you to use Filament. Because Filament is, just for info, Filament at this point is just much more than an admin panel, okay? And you can do a lot of things, they are difficult to explain here right now. But I feel like you should just try it a little bit and just build a website for something that displays a dynamic list or whatever. And you will just walk through the features, and I think it will be mind-blowing because it's absolutely awesome.
Okay, so teach me, like, what are the prerequisites? Like, do I have to use a specific tool to use Filament? Does it depend
just
on
Laravel.
Livewire?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's literally Laravel. So you do Laravel new whatever, and then you do a composer required filament, and that's it, and you are good to go. And they give you like some elements or text inputs and everything, just like Nova does. But if you want to customize those inputs, you use regular Livewire. You know?
So is the idea that I'm defining this stuff from the server side, how these like forms and such look? Is that the idea?
Exactly that. So everything is like defined at server level, and all of the code, it's literally like just chain of methods on those inputs. And what it's funny is that, I feel like the Filament team, something they do very well is that they have built this, let's call it admin panel, but for actually daily work, for the kind of applications people ask. So you find things like, tip-tap text editor or rich editor. You will find file uploads, and file uploads, they are chunkable, they just work. And I feel like they did very good this thing, which is, if you want to build a website like right now with a back office, with a front office, and if you want something that really just works for the daily things, you can use Filament. You know what I mean?
Very cool.
Yeah. I feel it's something that you need to try a little bit yourself, to really understand the power. Jeffrey, because again, I told you that this was supposed to be 40 minutes, and we are 1 hour in already. So, okay, I'm going to make you two more questions, what I'm literally super curious about. So actually 3 questions. The first one is about your environment stack at the moment. Which editor do you use? You mentioned already that you use Stable Plus for accessing the database, but what are some of your favorite tools that you use locally?
Okay, I've used everything over the years. I've tried every editor. I've played around with Cursor and Windsurf. Everyone's crapping on Windsurf. I thought it was cool, but I see all these tweets where people are like, nobody uses Windsurf. I was like, okay, ease up. I think it's cool. PHP Storm is my daily driver, though. I think it's so good. Cursor is interesting. Obviously, all the stuff you can do and the tab stuff you can do. Or it's kind of freaky, actually, where it like predicts where you're going to go next. And it's like, hey, you should probably tab to this section. And it's like, it's right. Blows my mind a little bit. But it always comes back to like the stuff you can do with PHP Storm and the Laravel IDEA plugin. It's just so good. The Laravel IDEA plugin is, again, the hero of that editor, in my opinion, as a Laravel developer. Because that guy has thought of everything that is annoying about using PHP Storm, and he just solves it. It's like, I hate that. Like, from here, I don't know how to get there. Okay, solved. I hate that I have to manually fill. Okay, solved. I hate that I have to go to the command line. Solved. So even when I try out Cursor, all of the cool things there, I always come back to like, but I can't do this. So I use PHP Storm. I like Junie. I wish it was a little faster. It's a little bit slow, but cool. It's very direct with me. I don't know if you've noticed this. I'll ask it a question, and it's like, it gives me a 1-sentence reply sometimes. I'm like, oh, okay. I was hoping you would go into more detail. Okay, so here's what happened. So I'm sorry, I just answered my own question as I was saying it. I would ask it a question, and then it would give me a 1-sentence reply, and I thought it was being kind of flippant with me. And I was like, geez, I'm asking you for help here, and you give me a 1-sentence brush off. And I didn't realize you can click this button, and then it gives you the whole page where it goes into more detail.
Exactly.
When I didn't see that the first time, and I'd ask a question, I'd be like, oh, okay, kind of a jerk, Junie. But no, of course, you click on it, and it tells you everything. I wish they can find a way to make it a little faster. It messes up the flow when it's like you take some time, you ask what you want it to do, and it really takes a little while. But I think all of that stuff is just going to get solved. That's just a time issue. Yeah. And that makes me wonder in general, just like how our jobs are going to change with AI. You're probably tired of talking about this, but it is something I think about a lot. What our jobs are going to look like in 2 years. And I've also thought, like, is there going to be a clear divide between slightly older developers, and I mean developers like roughly our age or older, and then younger people coming into the industry? I think there's going to be a wild divide, because above a certain age, you're going to cling to this idea of like code clarity, and that being paramount, right? Like, this needs to be clear, this needs to work, the indentation is right, all of the stuff that we learned, writing methods that clarify what you're doing and making sure methods are short. It doesn't matter anymore, potentially. And the young people are going to be fine with that because they don't have the baggage of that. They're just going to be like think about so many of the the recommendations we have, and you and I have learned over the years, is all about making the code easier to change. Well, if you do it like this, then in the future, when you need to change this code, it'll be simpler. But what happens when you're at a point where it's like, no, that's irrelevant, because if you need to change it, it's just going to go, and then AI creates a new version. Like that guideline maybe becomes irrelevant at some point.
I would go even deeper because if you have spacing, if you have literally spacing, will be more tokens for the AI to understand your code. You probably want the code as most unreadable as possible to not waste any tokens. This is just So but, go ahead.
Young people aren't going to have that baggage. Is my point. They're not going to care. They're just, the things that will attract, this is another one, is like the things that may attract them to building applications is maybe different than the things that attracted older people to writing code. And I'm curious to see how this plays out. So many of the things that I like about writing code is like the simple minutia. Like, I want to do this thing. What is it called? What is the name for this thing? Sometimes I'll go on Google and look for synonyms. Like, what is a cool thing that represents this idea? Yeah. What should the class be called? What should this method name be called? If the method is too long, like, how can I divide this up to make... Like, that's kind of what I like, where it almost turns into this Lego puzzle, where it's like I'm trying to build this puzzle perfectly so that it's beautiful. But again, it's like young people won't care about that. And I could imagine them even looking at older people as if like we're outdated, like what people say, okay, boomer, whatever the equivalent of that is for people in their 30s. They're going to do that. Like, oh, you need to know what this code does? Really? Okay. But I still feel that. Like, I'm not going to accept any code that AI writes if I don't understand what it's doing. I'll be fine with that if it's like a throwaway tool that I don't care about. But like my main project, I need to know what this code does. And I can totally imagine a 21-year-old laughing at that. Like, oh, yeah, really? You need to know what this computer does. You need to work. You need to know what every line does. You know what I mean? That's what they're going to do. So I do wonder how that's going to play out over the time.
You are exactly right. It will be just a divide between the people who actually dive deep into the code. And I think, the basic tasks for building websites, those jobs I think will be gone. Just doing regular websites, like small websites, those will be basically jobs that will be taken by AI developers, because you don't actually need a lot of code to produce those websites. So you can actually produce them using AI, even right now. But I think like there will be, people like me and you, or not me and you, but people like regular software engineers, I don't think will be just enough doing regular websites. They will have to expand a little bit more, know a little bit more about infrastructure, a little bit more about, to still be well paid. You can probably still be, have an average salary by being, an AI developer that does websites. But I think those positions will probably be less paid in the future because there will be a bunch of us. And a bunch of us who can produce very fast and quick.
Do you find, like, I'm curious, when you play around with it, are you blown away by AI, or are you like, okay, it's not there yet? What's your...
Yeah, I'm blown away when I ask for simple things almost. For example, I ask AI, can you optimize this so it doesn't reach the limit of memory, for example? It can actually rewrite that segment of code in the very performant way. So, and I'm blown away, like literally, I didn't have to search, I didn't have to try different things, and the test suite is still passing, so I'm happy. I'm not blown away when I ask AI to develop a full website, for example, because it looks like crap at the end, or either it looks too simple, or the code is just a total mess, it's just too big. So I think like the real golden rule about interacting with these tools is be specific, basically, that's what I feel. I want to be specific with my prompt. When I'm working with Junie, for example, I never ask Junie for building the entire feature. I always ask Junie something like, oh, can you write tests for that class just like the other tests are for that specific class, for example? And Junie is very good at that. For example, imagine that I need to dispatch a broadcasting event in all my actions. And that task is always the same thing for every single action I have. I go to Junie, I say, dude, I just made this for this action. Make sure you replicate that to the 100 actions we now have to make it super similar, So I feel like when,
Go ahead. So you treat it almost like almost your assistant, like your assistant, a junior, that stuff you don't want to deal with, you can just pass over to them.
Exactly, like a junior. That's a good word, a good way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, that's basically what I do too. It's especially amazing for things that have clear inputs and outputs, and you just tell it. What was the one I had today where I was like, this would have taken me 30 minutes to figure out. Just some kind of like JavaScript formatting thing where it accepts a long number and it needs to figure out how to like just annoying stuff that you never memorize. And then, like that problem was solved in 30 seconds, you know? Whereas again, it would have taken me like 20 minutes, and it's an annoying 20 minutes. It's not even the good 20 minutes of being a programmer.
I really feel that it's literally just it's kind of improving my life, honestly. Like my life, it's now easier thanks to AI in some regard. You know,
Me too.
If I want to, like for example, I want to prepare this interview with you, I can literally go to AI. Dude, I have like literally 20 questions. How much time do you think this will take? And AI will tell me, oh, it'll take about 45 minutes. Blah 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 blah. That's useful. Like literally, that's useful. You know, or for example, I can just load this 15 questions to AI and ask AI, do you think any of the questions is a little bit tricky, or the person coming may not feel comfortable? You know what I mean? I love this. Honestly, it's just here to help me out. I love it.
Yeah, I wonder, my fear, I think I'm a little more fearful than some. My fear is like, we are going to love it right up until the point we are completely irrelevant, you know? Like, I think right now it's like, look, I am the commander of the ship and I can just get all of this stuff for free, you know? And then it's going to get to the point where it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not the commander anymore. Suddenly I am the bottleneck of this operation, and I am irrelevant to what's happening. And hopefully the idea is that's far away. But my worry is it's maybe not as far away as we think it is. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think you have something, though, that probably will never be replaced, which I think I also have a little bit, which is I am genuine in the front of a camera. And I feel that over time, people actually want human reactions on the front of a camera. You know what I mean? People want to have people who do mistakes in the front of a camera, people who, you know, you do that a lot in your videos, like, oh, I just made a mistake, not exactly this, I want that. I think people like a little bit of that, you know?
It's the best part. It's where you learn the most, actually. That took me a while, because when I was first making videos, I had it in my head like I needed to like present as an expert, and I've completely deleted all of that. Like I'm well aware of how not good I am in most areas. And then I learned like, oh, people actually appreciate it when you screw up and you have to figure out how to solve the problem, because they're going to run into the exact same problem on their own. And it gives them a little guideline of like, oh, so this is how you debug some JavaScript issue, you know? Like I was watching a video myself about a year ago, and this guy, have you ever had that thing where it's like you hover over some tooltip and you want to inspect the tooltip, but you don't know how to do it because then the tooltip goes away. Somebody did this cool thing where they opened up the console, and they ran a script that's like JavaScript. Set timeout after 2 seconds, called debugger. And they run the code, and then they quickly hover over the tooltip. 1, 2, debugger runs, and it freezes the code. And now you can inspect the tooltip. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like that was the one thing I remember from this video I watched. Nothing else. Like the main thing, what they were teaching me, I don't remember any of it. But I remember that one debugging script, and I use it all the time now.
That's so interesting, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's on over situation literally happens to me all the time, and I just learned that with you right now, and probably will be the thing I will remember.
Makes perfect sense. Set timeout, 3 seconds, debugger. That's it. Try it out. Anyone watching this, try it out right now.
Dude, I literally prepared this interview today to just make the questions I always wanted to know, literally. And I know that you launched Laracasts back in 2013, and I know that you built the platform yourself. So I want to know, do you remember the very first code base of Laracast.com?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for calling it a platform in 2013. It was a website, okay? No platform. Okay, so here's how old that code base is. So 2013, that's 12 years ago. So I built that in the summer of 2013. I was working for a company called Envato that's based out of Australia. And I was running a site called NetTuts Plus. And yeah, kind of on the side, I was really getting into Laravel. Before that, I was kind of using Ruby on Rails at that point. And there's so much.
Really?
Very much.
You were a Ruby developer. I didn't know that. Okay.
And Laravel was actually the thing that brought me back to PHP. I wouldn't say I was a Ruby developer, but I was like, okay, I think I'm going to switch over to this. There's so much to appreciate about how the Ruby community kind of approaches code. that I like so much. Like I relate to how they think of things. But then I came across the site Laravel, and I think it was maybe Taylor had launched Laravel 3 at that point. I don't know. It's hard for me to remember because I think the distance between Laravel 1 and Laravel 3 is like a matter of months, maybe.
It's literally 4 months. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, because sometimes I feel like I was there at the beginning, but it was Laravel 3. No, like I was basically there at the beginning. And there was just so much to like about it, even at that point. It was kind of bizarre. In its infancy, like the documentation was awesome. You know, it kind of blows my mind. Sometimes people will complain about the Laravel documentation. And I want to say, like, what are you talking about? It's great. And
You haven't seen it, yeah.
It was great back in 2013, too. Taylor, I think, was the first person in the PHP world to kind of crack just an intuitive API and to put that before everything else. And I don't know, it super resonated with me. So, all right, to actually answer your question, the first version of Laracasts in 2013 was built with Laravel. It was a fully traditional server-side app. You click a button and it reloads the page. I used jQuery. I used
Oh yeah.
Bootstrap. So like we're talking about pretty traditional Laravel, Blade, and Bootstrap and jQuery. I mean, like that is synonymous with 2013 or maybe even before that.
Dude, those three frameworks or technologies, if you were to give them today, I would still know how to use them. Like literally, I still know how to hide an element in jQuery and just query the DOM with jQuery. It's just such an amazing framework, man. It's just, that's why probably I think it's still being used around the world by more than 60% of the web literally uses jQuery still, which is kind of insane. And, you talked about a very basic website, right? I dug a little bit into the screenshots of actually those very early days of Laracasts. And I'm going to post-produce this video to show the screenshots to people. But something I noticed, though, I was using this website where you can literally walk through the years to see all of how Laracasts look like. Exactly. Okay. And over the years. And I noticed that actually you change the design pretty much every 6 months. Or back in the days, at least. So how many front-end frameworks and front-end CSS frameworks tools have you used along those years?
Okay, great question. Okay, so here's how old the Laracast codebase is. After Bootstrap, I switched to a different CSS framework, and I don't know what it's called. I cannot remember what this thing was called, but it existed in the code base for so many years. Even after I'd sort of migrated away, it's hard to strip out a CSS framework because there's just so many things that you depend on, and it's like, oh, you get rid of it, and it's like, oh, now this is broken, and I don't know what the line height's all messed up. So it just sticks around for a really long time. And it took me years to remove this framework, and I do not know what it's called. That's how old the code base is. I can't remember.
But even the
Bulma?
Bulma CSS, it might have been that one. That's from 2015. Yeah. But also jQuery was like also making, I think jQuery, Bootstrap, was very popular back then for sure. Bootstrap 2,
right.
Bootstrap
No, it was
3.
Bootstrap at the beginning, and then I moved to something else. I think it was Bulma. If that word means something to you, then that must be it. But the whole point is I can't remember what it was called because it was probably 9 years ago or something like that. And then, of course, I eventually migrated to Tailwind, which I want to talk about. Okay, so here's why it changed so much in the early days. I'm still constantly tweaking it, but not like the early days. When I launched Laracast, it's a tricky thing because I was doing everything for that site, and I wasn't qualified to do like 90% of it. So with the design, it's like, I'm not a designer. As you've seen in some of those old screenshots, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was I knew. Here's a good way to put it. I knew just enough to know that it was wrong, that the design was bad, but I didn't know how to fix it. So I was constantly iterating on it. And I would get annoyed, and I would go through lots of phases where it's like, okay, I don't like this. I'm going to improve it. And then I'd realize later, the improvement was actually worse than what I had before. And then I would tweak it again. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think it became a little bit of a running joke back then. that I would change it so much, but also some of it was just it's a learning opportunity for me to completely rewrite something. And when you do it enough times, you start to realize like, okay, here's the things I'm doing that I keep having to change. So I'm going to tweak it a little bit, and it definitely made me better. But I'm still a horrible designer. Like I'm so thankful now that I have a couple people at Laracasts that help me with this, because left to my own devices, I'm pretty bad.
Honestly, your story reminds me a little bit of my early days at Laravel, where I remember coming to Laravel from a big company where I was not used to do things like design or documentation or videos. And then I came from Laravel and Taylor was like, okay, can you develop this feature, which is archive databases? And I had to conceptualize the feature. I had to code the feature. I have to design the feature, think about UX, documentation, video, and that. Literally, I actually learned a bunch. That's why probably today I'm doing video stuff. It's because I had time to learn back in the days. And, those early days at Laravel was also super important to me because I had the opportunity to actually explore and see how people do things. So I do totally relate with you.
I would imagine working for Taylor, like you have to almost be a product person yourself, just by necessity. Yeah. Like I could imagine in a bigger company, it's like, all right, you can do this section and then you hand it off to these people. But back then, you just didn't have enough people, so you have to do everything. And it forces, I would imagine, it forced you to level up in so many areas that you didn't really know anything about.
At some point, I think we were like 4 or 5 with 4 or 5 products too. And that was like, oh my God, how this company is even running. Insane. Dude.
Versus now, where I swear I don't go a single week without seeing a tweet about somebody saying they're now working for Laravel. It's kind of blowing my mind. I don't know how you have room for so many people.
Yeah, we are literally expanding the team. And because Cloud was so successful, we can, with some confidence, keep expanding the team. And hopefully with Nightwatch also being successful, which is coming out today. By the way, chat, Nightwatch is coming out today. Also, by the way, as a side note, I know some of you are seeing currently Jeffrey Way a little bit blurry. That's totally okay. So meaning that post-production, after this live stream, I'm going to publish the video with the right quality. So rest assured, you guys are going to see Jeffrey Way without any lag whatsoever later on. And yes, Nightwatch is coming out today, chat. I'm publishing the link on the chat right now if you want to get, to see how the landing page looks like. It will be out, I think, in 2 hours. Jeffrey, still about these early days, dude, I have a question. You know me, you know that I'm a big fan of testing in general. I have created past PHP too.
What?
But I also know that you were also one of the very first ones introducing testing in the community. And not a lot of people know about this, but, I digged a little bit into the past, and I noticed that you have made actually talks in some Laracons about testing. You actually wrote a book about testing called it Laravel Testing Decoded. So I want to know where this passion for testing came from. If it was something from your Rails journey back in the days, then you then port a little bit to the Laravel community, or it was something that you just learned yourself?
Okay, good question. First, anyone hearing, don't buy that Laravel Testing Decoded book. It is wildly outdated. I don't endorse it. If you find it, don't buy it. If you have it, burn it. Yes, so I got into testing. I found the testing world to be incredibly intimidating, especially, back in the 2005, 2010 days. People were so opinionated about how it should be done. And this is something I've run into a lot over the years, where it's like people treat certain things almost like the Bible, where it's like, here's this book that tells you how things are to be done, and you must follow these. And if you break outside, then you are sinning, so to speak. And that was really hard for me because I would try to read certain books and write my tests in a certain way to satisfy what they would recommend, how to split things up, and it always just felt. And I could never solve it because I would feel like I'm doing it right. I'm isolating everything. I'm doing this. I'm not touching the database. I'm doing everything these books tell me to do, and it's not working. I would write the test and immediately find a few months later if I change, like everyone notices this. You change the implementation and then suddenly the tests break, which is now we understand that is like an immediate sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a smell that you've done something wrong. But back then, I don't know if people felt that way. It was just like, you're going to have to rewrite these tests. You're going to have to mock all of this stuff out. That's the way it works. And at least that's how I felt. Or maybe I just, either way, maybe I didn't understand enough back then, but it felt incredibly intimidating. And it took me so long to feel like I understood how to write tests properly. And you know what? I still wonder if I'm screwing things up a little bit. But that's the entire point, right? It's just, I don't know. There's something about the testing world that is different from everything else. I don't know why people have such strong opinions in that area.
I think, especially back in the days, though, people, you know, there was a lot of drama in debates. I talked about with Taylor too about this situation where between like 2014 and 2020, everyone would see this tweeted dramas happening every week, you know, could be about testing, could be about final classes, could be about, you know, this sort of granular programming concepts. And I don't think we see that anymore, you know, because for multiple reasons. I think, for example, when regarding testing, people actually now have built products in maintaining tests over the years, taught everyone that feature testing and smoke testing and browser testing are actually tests that actually are important. And, you know, as you say, like literally when you test at unit level and you change the testing every time you change the code, that's a code smell immediately for me. You know, every time I have to change my test suite because I've changed the code, for me, that's like, okay, that is a problem with this test right here, and I do need to change this. So I totally relate about what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know. Back then, it was like, especially, now, here's an interesting point. So I got into the testing world from the Ruby community. They, especially at the time, I feel like more than any other community, were incredible advocates for test-driven development. Even though like I don't necessarily follow TDD 100%. I find it works in certain areas beautifully, and then in other areas it doesn't work as well. So it's kind of a mix. And actually, on that note, I find most things are kind of a mix. That's something I've learned over the years. It's never just like this is the way you do it. It's like no, do it sometimes that way. And then other times you can ease up. And maybe that's just maturing as a developer. I don't know. Knowing when it's okay to just break the rules. When you're younger, I don't know, there's a sense of like following, again, it's like following the scriptures. Like this is what we're supposed to do. If you look at the book here, 1 second. Like if you will just read this book, then it has all you need to know in order to how to do this properly. And then you try it out, and it's like, it didn't work out that way. But yeah, like the more you do it, you realize where it's like, okay, I'm going to ignore that. It's fine. I don't care what people say.
Dude, it's insane. It's insane that you are mentioning that, because I think it's exactly for that reason why I liked you so much back in 2015. You know, because I don't know if you know exactly my story, but one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of you, it's because back in 2015, I was literally learning programming, and I had to literally commute 1 hour and 30 minutes to work every single day. And what I used to do is literally download Laracasts series and watch them on the bus and on the train on my way to work. Wow. And I remember your videos being so much like, you know, hands-on, just watch me code and see how easy it is. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can simplify things and watch how easy it is and how easy it's just working. And, you know, your way of teaching things was just so good, man. I literally learned like PHP, Laravel, CSS, databases, everything from Laracasts. This was between amazing. Between 2015 and 2017. And everyone here in the chat is literally saying that they are either Laracasts members or they have learned programming through Laracasts. And, you know, I really hope you really understand how many people have learned from Laracasts. And just still on this topic of Laracasts and just watch me code, where did you learn that? Like, where did you learn how to teach on the Jeffrey way, literally? How to teach that way?
At the very beginning. So one of the first gigs I got was working for this company called Sirona. They made like medical equipment, and like I couldn't even tell you any more than that. They just made like scanning stuff. I don't even know what it was, but I like built some websites for them. I also built like some Flash websites for them that were so incredibly bad because I didn't have any experience with Flash, but I made them a Flash website. It's just amazing how over my head I've been in over the years. And what was I going to say about this? What was your question again? Remind me.
Yeah, just how did you learn to teach that way? Literally, how did you know that?
So I was sorry. So I was building these sites for Sirona, and I would figure things out along the way because, I don't know, when you are wildly in over your head is when you're learning the most. I think everyone recognizes that. It's very uncomfortable to feel like everyone is better than you, but it's also when you are super leveling up, just out of necessity, right? And so I would figure these things out, like, oh, this is how I do such an, and it could be really simple. It could be a simple grid layout. Like back then, we didn't have CSS grids. So like you made your grid by doing float left on your sidebar. And then there were situations like in Internet Explorer 6, there was this double margin bug where it would literally double the margins compared to, like, folks, if you're a little younger, this is what we had to deal with. IE6 would double your margins. And so you had to figure out, like, okay, for all normal browsers, we're going to do this. But for Internet Explorer 6, we need to adjust it because it doubles the margin. And there are all these hacks we had in CSS to target IE6. I can't remember them, but there was one where it's like if you prefix a CSS property with an underscore, that would target IE6 only, I think, but then modern browsers would ignore it. But IE7 would have its own quirks, right? And I think it was like if you prefix it with a star, so like star margin, 10 pixels, whatever, that would target IE7, but not IE6. And I can't remember most of them, so I might be a little off there. But it was just wild to me having to figure this stuff out on the fly. So I would make these videos almost for myself, where it's like, okay, I think I got it. Like we all know this in the early days, where it's like you feel yourself grasping something. You're like, okay, I think I got it. I think I got it. And I would record a video almost like to document what I've learned, almost like I'm teaching myself. Like, okay, here's what you do. So if I need to come back later, I have this down and I'm not going to forget it. I would run into that a little bit, where it's like I would figure something out and then I would instantly forget it like a month later. So the videos were a way for me to document it so I didn't forget how to do the thing. And then I would upload it to YouTube. But here's the interesting thing about YouTube back then. It wasn't like it is today, where you can upload a programming screencast and it's 4K. It was like, I don't know what it was. It was like 320. It was 480p. 320, yeah. So the text was so incredibly blurry that you couldn't read the text in your code editor. So like if you've ever watched an old code video on YouTube and the text is like 30 point, they were doing that because it was the only way for you to possibly read the text.
That's insane.
So they were so bad, but I would make these videos for myself and I would throw them up on YouTube just in case anyone was interested. And people would watch them, and it blew my mind. And back then, there were these link aggregator websites where you could like upload a link to your blog article or something, and it would show up on their homepage. I can't remember the one I used, but yeah, you could submit like some dumb HTML and CSS blog post you wrote, and it would show up on their homepage, and then people would visit it, and they would come to your website. And I did this one day. And 400 people came to my website, and this blew my mind. Laracasts has had like millions of visitors over the years, millions and millions and millions. But back then, 400 in a day was like it blew my mind how cool that was. That was my first introduction to like, oh, you can like create a thing, share it with people, you can write a thing, and they're actually going to read it. Strangers you've never met are actually going to read it. And again, it's like younger people are like, yeah, that's how the internet works, bro. But again, it's like that was the early days back then. That was a wild thing that we sort of take for granted now. So yeah, that's how I got started. It was literally documenting the things I had learned. And then people just started watching.
That's insane, dude. Honestly, the way you teach programming these days it's still my reference. Like when I'm trying to produce any kind of content, I would just is this close to the Jeffrey way? If it's like remotely close, I'm already happy. So it feels good, man. Dude, so I want to finish this because it's already 1 hour and a half. I want to finish this by doing a quick game. So I'm gonna make you 5 lightning questions, okay? And you have to pick the answer instantly. So just as an example, if I say something like pizza or burger, you just pick your favorite real fast. Okay?
Okay.
So it will be 5 questions like this. You ready? Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Light theme or dark theme?
Dark.
Would you rather record videos in the morning or at night?
Morning.
Vue or React?
View.
Pest or PHP unit?
I gotta say pest.
Who plays better Rocket League, Jeffrey Way or Taylor Otwell?
Taylor. I'm a realist. I got my butt kicked. By the way, Taylor is wildly competitive. If anyone doesn't know, he is aggressively, I don't know how to explain this. Like
Trash talking.
I don't even know if I want to get into this. Back in the day, like we would have these Rocket League games, and we were just mean to each other. Like you beat the other person, and you instantly yank out so that they're just left with nobody on the other end, which is really mean. And, he would always beat me. It turned out like he ended up being kind of like an expert level. I never got even that close, and I haven't played Rocket League in years.
So the reason why I made you this question is because I found an interview of you that you actually said that Taylor is awesome developer, but Rocket League kind of sucks a little bit, and you were like trash talking a little bit. And I was like,
that was probably when I was trying to be better, but since then I have understood that I will never be as good.
Dude, thank you so much for joining me today. Chat, if you enjoyed the conversation with Jeffrey, just hit the like and the subscribe button. That's really important for my work. And please write on the comments below if you have learned any programming concept on Laracasts, just like me. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming today, dude, and catch you next time, man. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right.